Vincent Cain made one bold resolution for 2024 to leave an unforgettable legacy, but failure loomed until New Year's Eve brought an extraordinary twist. Vincent Cain stood at the pinnacle of success, yet a gnawing emptiness followed him wherever he went. As 2024 began, his life resembled a glossy magazine spread. Elegant suits, roaring sports cars, and gala appearances under dazzling lights. Cain Enterprises dominated the Midwest real estate market, a testament to his grit and unyielding ambition. But, with every passing year, Vincent grew more acutely aware of the hollowness in his achievements. The turning point came as he gazed over his city from his penthouse balcony on New Year's Eve. The revelry below seemed to mock his sense of fulfillment. For all his material wealth, Vincent longed for something intangible, a legacy that could outlive skyscrapers and profit margins. That night he resolved to reinvent his business and himself. The idea came to him during an insomniac moment. Eco-friendly housing, sustainable, impactful, and innovative. These words resonated with the kind of legacy Vincent dreamed of. By sunrise, the ambitious blueprint for Cain Enterprises' transformation had taken root. This wasn't merely business. It was a mission to prove to himself and the world that a man like him could create something lasting, meaningful, and profoundly good. Vincent wasted no time turning his vision into action. By mid-January, he was in boardrooms with his top executives, laying out plans for a groundbreaking eco-friendly housing initiative. He envisioned vibrant communities powered by renewable energy, designed with sustainable materials and tailored for middle-class families. Affordable luxury with minimal environmental impact. His passion was infectious, and it seemed his team shared his zeal for a time. But as the weeks turned into months, reality struck. Skeptics in the industry openly mocked the project, dubbing it Cain's green fantasy. Investors, while intrigued, hesitated to pour money into an idea that strayed far from Vincent's proven formula of high-end urban developments. To them, eco-housing seemed like a risky, low-margin endeavor that clashed with his track record of opulence and excess. The internal challenges grew even fiercer. His company's senior executives, most of whom had built their careers on traditional real estate ventures, began questioning Vincent's direction. Heated meetings became the norm, and whispers of dissent circulated through the halls of Cain Enterprises. Still, Vincent pressed on, confident that his vision was not only viable, but inevitable. He believed the future would validate his choices, no matter the present resistance. By February, Vincent's passion for the project began testing the limits of his stamina. He worked around the clock, meeting with architects, environmental consultants, and marketing strategists to refine the vision. The flagship project, dubbed Haven Fields, was set to break ground in the heart of a struggling suburban area, a place Vincent believed could become a symbol of renewal. But for all his determination, obstacles continued to mount. The project's budget ballooned as eco-friendly materials proved more expensive than anticipated. Delays in acquiring permits sparked friction with local officials, some of whom questioned whether the initiative was more about PR than genuine change. Financial news outlets began speculating whether Cain Enterprises could withstand the strain of Vincent's high-stakes gamble. At the same time, his personal life started to unravel. Once a man who thrived on networking and socializing, Vincent became a recluse, consumed by the demands of his mission. Invitations to dinners and charity galas went unanswered, and his closest friends began to drift away, frustrated by his single-minded focus. Even his assistant Amanda, a loyal fixture by his side for nearly a decade, expressed concern about the toll this endeavor was taking on him. March arrived with the weight of uncertainty pressing harder on Vincent's shoulders. Despite his unyielding drive, the cracks in his grand vision were becoming harder to ignore. His flagship Haven Fields project was stalled due to supply chain disruptions, and the rising costs threatened to push it beyond the reach of even his investors' patience. Boardroom discussions became battlegrounds, with some suggesting he scale back the project to appease financiers. But Vincent's most devastating setback came on a deeply personal front. His mother, the woman who had been his greatest cheerleader and the anchor of his resilience, fell gravely ill. Vincent, for all his wealth and connections, could do little but sit by her bedside as she fought for her life. The sight of her fragile form was a painful reminder of life's frailty, a truth that no amount of ambition or success could shield him from. When she recovered, her words struck a chord he could not ignore. "Vincent, money can build houses, but only heart can make them homes." That moment crystallized his purpose, but it also deepened the stakes. He was no longer just building a legacy. He was striving to honor the values she had instilled in him, a task that felt both empowering and insurmountable. Vincent Kane was no stranger to adversity, but the stakes of his current gamble felt unprecedented. As spring blossomed, his vision for Haven Fields faced relentless obstacles that seemed to multiply by the day. The eco-friendly materials he had championed became nearly impossible to source consistently as global supply chains reeled from economic and political upheaval. His project manager warned that even with expedited efforts, the delays would set the project back by months. The financial fallout was swift. Investors began retracting their commitments, leaving Vincent scrambling to plug budgetary gaps with his personal fortune. At an emergency meeting in late April, one of his most trusted advisors, Marcus Hall, issued a grave warning. "Vincent, if we don't scale back now, Kane Enterprises may not survive this project." But Vincent refused to compromise. To him, scaling back felt like betraying the very essence of Haven Fields, a beacon of hope for sustainable living and the legacy he was so desperate to secure. He poured his energy into finding alternative funding sources. Vincent met with venture capitalists, pitched at environmental summits, and even courted government grants. Yet, every small victory was met with new hurdles, and his resources were thinning fast. The mounting pressure didn't just impact his professional life. It began to erode his personal relationships further. Amanda, his longtime assistant, became one of the few remaining allies in his corner, working tirelessly to keep his schedule afloat and morale intact. But even she could see the toll it was taking. "Vincent, you can't save the world if you're running yourself into the ground," she said one evening after a particularly grueling day. Her words stung but did little to slow him down. He threw himself deeper into work, isolating himself further from the few personal connections he still had. Nights stretched into early mornings as he obsessively fine-tuned architectural designs and marketing pitches, trying to anticipate every possible failure before it could materialize. It was during one of these sleepless nights that a new crisis emerged. An investigative journalist had begun digging into Kane Enterprises' past projects, unearthing old controversies and allegations that Vincent had long since buried. Though none of these claims directly tied to Haven Fields, the negative publicity threatened to tarnish his image just as he needed public support the most. What's worse, his rival, Grant Archer, CEO of a competing real estate firm, seized the opportunity to undermine him. Archer's firm announced a competing eco-housing initiative with promises of faster timelines and lower costs. Archer's slick presentations and well-timed press releases painted Vincent as an overambitious dreamer doomed to fail. With Archer stealing the spotlight, Vincent felt his carefully built legacy slipping further away. His determination hardened into obsession. He began micromanaging every aspect of Haven Fields, alienating even his most loyal staff. Meetings grew tense, and once enthusiastic team members became weary of his demands. Despite their frustrations, Vincent pressed forward, convinced that triumph was just within reach, if only he could keep fighting. Yet, in his quiet moments, doubts crept in. The memory of his mother's words haunted him. Was he truly building something meaningful, or was he simply chasing another hollow dream? By May, Haven Fields had become both a source of hope and a battleground. Vincent's relentless pursuit of perfection left no room for error, but the cracks in his team's unity were starting to widen. While his engineers and architects wrestled with logistical challenges, his marketing team struggled to reshape public perception in light of the negative press. The articles exposing past controversies gained traction, fueled by Grant Archer's strategic leaks. Accusations of mismanagement on previous projects and unflattering anecdotes from former employees painted Vincent as a tyrannical leader obsessed with profit. These stories were splashed across headlines, causing Vincent's public approval ratings to plummet. Archer's initiative, meanwhile, received glowing endorsements from environmental groups eager for a success story in sustainable housing. In response, Vincent doubled down. He personally addressed the media at a press conference, outlining the distinct features that set Haven Fields apart. "This project isn't about cutting corners or chasing headlines," he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "It's about building something that will last, a community that can inspire others to think differently about our impact on the world." While the press conference momentarily shifted the narrative, it wasn't enough to quell the mounting pressure. Financial woes deepened as additional investors withdrew, unnerved by the growing uncertainty. One by one, Vincent's options narrowed, forcing him to make painful decisions. He laid off several employees and scaled back auxiliary features of Haven Fields to stretch the budget. The strain began manifesting physically. Vincent's sharp suits no longer concealed the toll the sleepless nights and constant stress had taken. Amanda tried to intervene, urging him to take a step back, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Vincent brushed her off, insisting that he didn't have the luxury of slowing down. "If I stop now, everything will fall apart," he said during a late-night conversation in the dimly lit office. Meanwhile, a new opportunity surfaced. An international investment firm expressed interest in Haven Fields, provided Vincent agreed to certain compromises. Their proposal included reducing the number of green energy features and introducing high-end luxury units to make the project more profitable. It was a tempting offer, one that could potentially save Kane Enterprises from financial collapse. But it came at the expense of Vincent's vision. Torn between pragmatism and principle, Vincent sought advice from his mother, who was still recovering but eager to support her son in any way she could. She listened intently as he laid out the details of the deal, her expression thoughtful. "Vincent," she said softly, "legacy isn't about taking the easy path. It's about staying true to your values, even when the world tries to steer you away from them." Her words reignited his resolve, but the decision didn't come without consequences. Turning down the deal meant he would need to secure alternative funding quickly, and the search consumed every waking hour. His rivalry with Archer also intensified. A heated exchange at an industry panel escalated into a public feud, with Archer mocking Vincent's pipe dream in front of the audience. Despite the setbacks, Vincent began to see glimmers of hope. A small but influential group of environmentalists publicly endorsed Haven Fields, praising its integrity in contrast to Archer's profit-driven model. This endorsement bolstered Vincent's confidence, but it also made him a target for further attacks. With each step forward, the weight of his ambition grew heavier. By early summer, Vincent Kane found himself walking an impossibly narrow path. Haven Fields was teetering on the edge of viability, and his determination had turned into desperation. Every decision felt like a gamble. He authorized the use of an untested sustainable material to cut costs, despite the warnings from his project manager. "If we don't take risks now, we'll never finish," Vincent argued, though the tension in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. The gamble paid off initially, as the material streamlined construction and brought down expenses. Progress resumed, and for a brief moment it seemed like Haven Fields might regain its footing. Vincent's team even managed to complete the first prototype home, a sleek, energy-efficient marvel that drew praise from the press during a carefully orchestrated open house. Families toured the model home, marveling at its innovative design and affordable pricing. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Just weeks later, a structural flaw in the material caused a partial collapse of the prototype's roofing during a routine inspection. The news spread like wildfire, reigniting doubts about the project's feasibility. Archer seized the opportunity to criticize Vincent publicly, painting the incident as proof of his recklessness and inability to deliver on promises. The setback hit Vincent hard, but he refused to let it derail his vision. He convened an emergency meeting with his top engineers and environmental consultants, demanding solutions to the material's shortcomings. Despite the setbacks, his leadership during the crisis inspired renewed loyalty among some of his team. "We're not giving up," he told them firmly. "This project is bigger than any one mistake." The challenges continued to mount, but so did small victories. A surprising partnership with a major renewable energy company brought much-needed funding and technical expertise. The partnership was a gamble on both sides. The company saw potential in Vincent's vision, but remained cautious about his precarious situation. Still, the influx of resources reinvigorated the project, and construction resumed at a faster pace. Amid these developments, Vincent faced another kind of challenge: his growing isolation. Amanda, his assistant, grew increasingly frustrated with his inability to acknowledge the human cost of his ambition. One evening, after yet another tense exchange, she confronted him. "Vincent, do you even see what this is doing to you? To us? You're so consumed with proving everyone wrong that you're forgetting why you started this in the first place." Her words echoed in his mind long after she stormed out of the office. Vincent began to reflect on the relationships he had neglected. His mother's advice, his friend's distance, Amanda's loyalty, all were sacrifices on the altar of his ambition. For the first time, he questioned whether the legacy he was chasing was worth the cost. But there was little time for introspection. A major storm in late June wreaked havoc on the Haven Fields construction site, damaging equipment and delaying progress yet again. The financial strain grew unbearable, forcing Vincent to liquidate one of his prized assets, an iconic skyscraper in downtown Chicago, to keep the project afloat. The move shocked the industry and cemented his reputation as a man willing to risk everything. As July approached, the project reached a critical juncture. The first phase of Haven Fields had to be completed by the end of the month to secure a key government grant. Failure would mean financial ruin, but success could mark a turning point. The countdown began, and with it, Vincent's sense of urgency reached a fever pitch. The weight of the decision pressed on Vincent with a suffocating intensity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the construction site of Haven Fields seemed to hold its breath, the sounds of the workers a muted hum in the background. Every detail of the project, the eco-friendly homes, the community-focused vision, had cost him more than money. It had cost him peace, relationships, and his sense of self. And yet, he couldn't help but feel that the end was within reach, though it felt like a fleeting dream. Vincent had known this moment would come. The investment firm's offer had been the lifeline he had hoped for, but it was a lifeline that would come with strings attached. To save Kane Enterprises, he would have to compromise the very essence of Haven Fields, diluting the green energy initiatives, swapping sustainable materials for cheaper alternatives, and introducing high-end luxury units that contradicted everything he believed the project stood for. But without that investment, the entire project might crumble. He stood on the edge of the site, looking out over the expanse of unfinished homes, knowing full well that every decision from here on out could determine the future of Kane Enterprises. The financial strain had become too much to bear, and the pressures from his investors, the media, and the industry at large had reached a fever pitch. Even his own team was starting to fray at the edges. The collapse of the prototype home's roof had dealt a crippling blow to their already fragile morale, and now the press was having a field day, amplifying the doubts that were already threatening to undo everything he had worked for. In the midst of the chaos, Vincent's mind kept drifting back to the words of his mother. "Money can build houses, but only heart can make them homes." It was a message that had always grounded him, but now it felt like a distant echo, buried beneath layers of pressure and desperation. Amanda, his assistant, had been with him through every high and low of this journey, and as the days dragged on, her concern for him had deepened. She saw the strain in his eyes, the way he was becoming more distant, more consumed by the project, even as it seemed to slip further from his grasp. Her gentle words, urging him to step back, to find balance, had fallen on deaf ears. but even she could sense that something was shifting in him, a change that he was too stubborn to acknowledge. The call from the investment firm had come earlier that day, pushing him to make a decision within 24 hours. If he didn't accept their terms, the project would likely be abandoned. Kane Enterprises would be left with nothing but a pile of failed dreams. It was a bleak choice, but it was the one that felt most realistic. Yet as Vincent stood there, watching the workers move about, he began to question whether the cost of that deal, compromising his vision, his values, was too high. Was it worth saving a project that no longer reflected who he had set out to be? Could he really continue on this path, driven by the fear of failure, when he had lost sight of the very thing that had sparked his passion in the first place? The noise of the site faded as his mind began to spin. He thought of the thousands of families who would one day call Haven Fields home. Families who needed not just affordable housing but homes that could endure for generations, homes built on the foundation of sustainability, compassion, and care. He had set out to create something lasting, something real. But now, as the clock ticked, it felt like that dream was slipping away. Amanda's words, still fresh in his mind, resonated deeply within him. You can't keep doing this without asking yourself what matters most. The truth was undeniable. The legacy he was trying to build had to be more than a business venture. It had to be a testament to the values that had driven him to this point. Without that, it was just another development, just another project in a long line of empty promises. Vincent looked up at the unfinished homes, the skeletal structures that had once represented hope. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him. What had he become? A man obsessed with success, chasing a vision that was no longer his own, losing sight of everything that had once mattered to him. The thought of walking away from the project, of abandoning the vision that had been his guiding star, terrified him. But so did the idea of continuing down this path, knowing that the dream he had once believed in was now tainted by compromise. As if sensing his inner turmoil, Amanda appeared at his side. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there quietly watching him. She had always been the steady presence in his life, the one who reminded him of who he was when the world threatened to drown him in its expectations. In the silence, Vincent realized how much he had taken her for granted. She had been his rock and he had pushed her away. I can't keep doing this, he finally said, his voice strained. I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. Amanda didn't respond immediately. She just placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and steady. It was the only comfort he had left in the whirlwind of his life. Vincent felt the weight of the decision in every fiber of his being. He had to choose, and he knew that whatever path he took, it would change everything. He could accept the deal, save the project, and secure his legacy, but it would be a hollow victory. Or he could risk it all, walk away from the investment, and fight for the vision he had once believed in, even if it meant failure. The sound of his phone buzzing in his pocket interrupted his thoughts. Another call from the investment firm. Another plea for a decision. For a long moment, Vincent stood still, the world moving around him as he tried to find clarity amidst the chaos. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. He had spent his entire life building empires, skyscrapers, luxury homes, businesses. But the truth was, he had never really built anything that would last, not in the way that mattered. With a deep breath, he made his choice. He would not compromise. He would not abandon the vision that had once set his soul on fire. Vincent turned to Amanda, a resolute look in his eyes. We're going to finish Haven Fields, but we're going to do it on our terms, not theirs. Whatever it takes. The decision was made. Now, all that was left was to see if he could make his vision a reality. The risks were higher than ever, but for the first time in months, Vincent felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for success anymore. He was fighting for something that truly mattered. In the days following Vincent's decision, the atmosphere at Kane Enterprises was charged with an uncertain energy. The storm had passed, but the aftershocks were still felt in every corner of the office and the construction site. Vincent's bold refusal to accept the investment firm's deal sent shockwaves through the company. Some employees whispered about the risks involved, others openly questioned his judgment. But through it all, Vincent's resolve remained unshaken. He had made the commitment to rebuild Haven Fields without cutting corners, even if it meant putting his company's survival on the line. Every step forward would be a fight, but for the first time in months, he was certain of the path he had chosen. It was a gamble, but it was one that felt right. Vincent's first order of business was to gather his senior leadership team. The stakes were too high to let doubts fester, and he needed every member of the team aligned with the vision. In the boardroom, as the team assembled, there was an unfamiliar silence in the air. The room, typically filled with energy and conflict, was subdued as Vincent took his place at the head of the table. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Vincent began, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made every word matter. "I know the last few months have been tough, but we're not backing down. We've faced bigger challenges before, and I believe in this team. I believe in Haven Fields, and I believe in what we're doing here." There was a pause before his chief architect David spoke up. "Vincent, we all know what's at stake. But can you promise me that we won't face another setback like the prototype collapse? We can't afford more mistakes. If we don't move forward carefully, we could lose everything." Vincent nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. "I know, David. We've learned from every setback and we're going to make this work. But this project is about more than profits. It's about building something that matters. So we're going to take our time, secure the right partners, and do this the right way." Amanda, standing near the door, watched the meeting unfold. She had been with Vincent for nearly a decade, but this was the first time she had seen him so committed, so unwavering in his vision. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but there was a new fire there too. He had chosen a difficult path, but it was the one that aligned with his values. For the first time in a long time, Amanda allowed herself to believe that Vincent could make this work. Over the next few weeks, Vincent's leadership took on a new energy. He met with environmental experts, architects, and local officials, focusing on building partnerships with companies and organizations that shared his vision for sustainability. Despite the doubts from some corners of the industry, Vincent began to see small wins. A renewable energy company signed on to partner with Haven Fields, providing the infrastructure needed for the community's energy needs. Another unexpected partnership formed with a well-respected nonprofit that focused on affordable housing in underserved communities. These alliances were small victories in the larger battle, but they were victories nonetheless. Yet, not everything went smoothly. The press continued to scrutinize Haven Fields, questioning whether Vincent's idealistic vision could truly survive in the cutthroat world of real estate. The media continued to paint him as an overzealous dreamer, but the weight of public opinion no longer felt as oppressive. Vincent had accepted that some people would never understand the vision he was fighting for. What mattered now was staying true to it, no matter the cost. Amanda remained by his side throughout the tumult. Their relationship had shifted over the course of the project. Once a professional partnership, their bond had deepened into something more personal. The late-night phone calls, the hours spent poring over plans together, Vincent realized how much Amanda had become not just a colleague, but a confidant, a support system. She was the one who kept him grounded, who reminded him when he was pushing too hard, and who celebrated the small victories with him. The strain between them, the distance that had grown when Vincent had become consumed by the project, was slowly starting to fade. But they both knew that there was still much to be done. One of the toughest battles came when Vincent had to sit down with his investors. Many had already backed out, and those who remained were becoming restless. They wanted results, and they wanted them now. Vincent had to convince them that this project could still yield returns, but more importantly, that it would prove to be a success that went beyond money. The meeting was tense. The investors weren't interested in Vincent's idealism or the long-term vision. They wanted hard facts, numbers, and guarantees. One investor, a sharp businessman named Gerald Holt, leaned forward, his fingers drumming on the table. "Vincent, you're asking us to take a leap of faith here," Holt said, his voice cold. "We've been patient, but time is running out. If you can't deliver something concrete soon, we'll have no choice but to pull the plug. You can't keep chasing this green dream if it doesn't make us money." Vincent stood his ground, knowing that his pitch was no longer about the bottom line. It was about proving that what they were doing was worth the risk. He wasn't asking for a blank check. He was asking them to trust in something bigger than immediate profit. "I understand your concerns," Vincent said, his voice firm but measured. "But I'm not just asking you to take a leap of faith. I'm asking you to believe in something that's bigger than any one project. Haven Fields is about creating a new standard, sustainable living, affordable housing, a legacy for future generations. This isn't just about making money. It's about creating something that will stand the test of time." The silence in the room was palpable. The investors exchanged glances, sizing Vincent up. It was clear that some were still skeptical, but Vincent's unwavering belief in the project had shifted the tone. Holt finally spoke, his voice more thoughtful than before. "We'll give you one more round of funding, but you need to show us results soon, no more delays. We need to see the finished product." Vincent nodded, his heart racing. "Thank you. I won't let you down." The pressure was mounting, but Vincent had the support he needed. He wasn't alone in this fight anymore. And slowly, step by step, the momentum began to build. As the summer sun began to fade into fall, Haven Fields started to take shape in ways that no one could have predicted. The first model homes were completed, with families from the local community eagerly touring the eco-friendly homes. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The homes were beautiful, affordable, and most importantly, they were everything Vincent had promised: sustainable, practical, and designed with care. But even as things began to fall into place, Vincent knew that there was still a long road ahead. He had made it this far, but the future of Haven Fields and Kane Enterprises was still uncertain. The stakes had never been higher. The road to success had been paved with failures, setbacks, and sacrifices, but Vincent had reached a turning point. And no matter what happened next, he knew he would never stop fighting for the legacy he believed in. The final steps of the project were now behind Vincent. As Haven Fields flourished, the last pieces of the grand puzzle were coming together. The green spaces were filled with families who had been waiting for this very moment. Children played on the lush lawns, couples strolled through the streets lined with trees, and the community buzzed with the promise of something more, something sustainable. Vincent stood on the balcony of the first completed home, his eyes scanning the scene below. The air was crisp, and for the first time in months he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. He was no longer looking at a barren construction site filled with uncertainties. Instead, he saw a thriving, vibrant neighborhood, one that had been born from his dreams, his struggles, and his vision. Amanda, who had been with him every step of the way, stood beside him, her gaze matching his as they both took in the progress they had made. She had been more than a colleague to Vincent. Through every late-night call, every failure, and every triumph, she had been his rock. Now, as they both stood at the pinnacle of this monumental achievement, he could sense the changes that had taken place between them. Their professional relationship had blossomed into something far deeper. They had seen the worst of each other and the best, and through it all, they had come to rely on one another in ways that went beyond business. "You did it," Amanda said, her voice soft but full of admiration. Vincent didn't immediately respond. Instead, he let the moment settle in. The quiet hum of activity below was a sharp contrast to the chaos that had once engulfed him. The project, though not without its challenges, had exceeded all expectations. The local government had taken note of the sustainable housing project, and other developers were beginning to follow suit, eager to replicate the success of Haven Fields. It wasn't just a home for people. It was a statement, a blueprint for a better future. "I couldn't have done it without you," Vincent finally said, turning to look at her. His eyes were full of gratitude, not just for the success they had achieved, but for the unwavering support she had given him. He had built this community, yes, but Amanda had been his constant in the chaos. Their relationship, though complex, had found its rhythm. They had each changed throughout the project. The sleepless nights, the gut-wrenching decisions, and the personal sacrifices had redefined what it meant to work together. For Vincent, it was no longer just about finding success. It was about making the right choices for the world around him. And Amanda had shown him how to balance that with a sense of humanity. As Haven Fields began to take root, the returns Vincent had once been so concerned about began to materialize. The investments that had seemed like a risk to many were proving to be more than just financially viable. The model homes sold quickly, attracting families who wanted to be part of something greater. Word of mouth spread, not just about the affordability or the sustainability of the homes, but about the community they were becoming. People weren't just buying houses, they were buying into a way of life, a commitment to the environment, and a future that was no longer defined by short-term gain. Vincent's office, once a room filled with anxiety and unanswered questions, had become a space of quiet triumph. The glossy brochures and pristine floor plans now adorned the table, but the real success lay in the tangible reality of Haven Fields. The media, which had once criticized him, now came knocking at his door for interviews, eager to capture his story of redemption and perseverance. But Vincent wasn't interested in the headlines. He wasn't seeking glory or fame. His mission had always been clear. He had wanted to build something meaningful, and that's exactly what he had done. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the community, Vincent took a walk through Haven Fields. The soft hum of conversation filled the air, and the sound of children laughing carried across the breeze. He passed by families tending to their gardens and others enjoying the newly installed parks. Every step he took, he felt the weight of the past few years dissolve. There was no more pressure, no more second-guessing. The hard work, the sacrifices, and the long hours had all been worth it. At the center of the community stood the first tree he had planted when the project had begun, a symbol of growth and resilience. He walked over to it, his hand brushing against the bark, and paused for a moment. It wasn't just a tree. It was a reminder of everything he had fought for. Amanda joined him a few minutes later, her presence as comforting as ever. "It's more than we ever imagined," she said, her voice full of awe. Vincent nodded, his gaze never leaving the tree. "I used to dream of things like this, but I never thought I'd see it come to life. I thought I'd be chasing something elusive forever." "You're still chasing something," Amanda replied with a smile. "But now you know what it is." Vincent turned to face her. He had spent so much time building, working, and focusing on the tangible results. But now, as he looked at Amanda, he realized that what mattered most wasn't the success they had achieved. It was the purpose behind it. Haven Fields wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about creating a lasting impact, about changing lives in ways they would never fully measure. As they walked back toward the heart of the community, hand in hand, Vincent felt a quiet contentment settle over him. The project had reached its conclusion, but this was only the beginning. There was still much to be done, but for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. The future of Kane Enterprises no longer rested solely on the weight of profits and competition. It rested on something deeper, the belief that success, when done the right way, could be a force for good. He had proven it with Haven Fields, and now, the world was starting to see that what mattered most wasn't just building for today, but building for tomorrow. In that moment, surrounded by the people whose lives had been transformed by the project, Vincent understood that his work had only just begun. There were more communities to build, more lives to touch, and more dreams to bring to life. But he no longer felt alone in the pursuit. With Amanda by his side, and a team of like-minded individuals, Vincent had found a new purpose, one that would not just change his world, but the world of everyone who walked through the gates of Haven Fields. As the evening sun set behind them, Vincent felt the weight of the past finally fall away. The road had been long, and at times nearly impossible to navigate, but as he looked at the thriving community before him, he knew it had been worth every step. Haven Fields was more than just a project, it was a legacy, and it was only the beginning.